Hello, everyone. I've noticed that there's a movie out called The Friend, and the the plot synopsis is that a a complicated individual, played by Bill Murray, the wonderful Bill Murray, he dies. He commits suicide, actually. He dies, and he leaves his Great Dane, his Harlequin Great Dane, to his friend. He leaves it to her in his will, and all kinds of mishaps occur, and both the person, both the woman and the dog, are obviously in grief. So I haven't seen the movie. It's got mixed reviews. I'll tell you that. From what I read, it's got mixed reviews. But it did put me in mind of a situation involving another death and another Great Dane, a Harlequin Great Dane. So for those of you that don't know what a Harlequin Great Dane is, that is the black and white. So it looks like a big Dalmatian or a small Holstein cow. That is the Harlequin. Great Danes come in various colors. They come in gray, they come in black, they come in brown, they come in Boston mantle. I think it's also called the same. So anyway, I'm going to tell you about the Great Dane that this film has jogged my memory about. Before I do that, if you like what you see on this channel, not just now but in general, man, it would be great if you could subscribe and like. It would be just copacetic, just fantastic. All right, here we go. So I was living in a house, a very large house in New Orleans, and I guess it was 1980, and I was renting a room in the house, a big room, because it's a big house, a big old house, and the house was on Napoleon Avenue, I believe. We were almost at Napoleon and St. Charles, uptown, for those of you familiar with New Orleans. And the guy that owned the house, he rented out rooms by the month, or rather, I should say, he rented out rooms, and I think the minimum term was 6 months, and he rented out rooms up to 2 years if you wanted to sign a contract for that long. Beautiful house, beautiful kitchen, and I was broke. I mean, I was flat broke, and I couldn't afford an apartment by myself. So, I answered the ad, went and saw the place. Guy seemed great. He had a Great Dane, a beautiful Great Dane named Lucy. And, I signed up and moved in, and the other people in the house were all ages, male, female. The guy that rented the house, gosh, I wish I could remember his last name. His first name was Perry. He was retired at this point. He had been a publicist for 3 or 4 of the major motion picture studios. And he was a funny guy, very personable. very loquacious. He loved to talk, man. And he was one of these guys that um, got married, had 3 sons, and then when he was about, I think, 50 years old, decided that he was gay. He was really actually homosexual, and that was that. He he embarked on a new life. Um, Now, he was great with everybody there. I mean, most of the people there, most of the tenants, they were men, but he never, nothing funny. I mean, no, he never made a pass at anyone. He was kind of like a den mother, but you know, a bald den mother in his 60s. So I had pretty much just a valise, and I moved in. It was furnished, and I was there for quite a while. And enjoyed living there. At some point, uh, I mentioned to him that I loved his dog. I mean, I love dogs in general, and I especially like big dogs. I especially like Great Danes. Um, pretty much anything in the Mastiff family, which the Great Dane is part of the Mastiff family. And I said, oh, gosh, she's beautiful, love her. And he said, well, I'll tell you an interesting story. And this is the interesting story I'm going to tell to you. He said, I'll tell you how I got Lucy, the Harlequin Great Dane. And so what had happened was he was looking for a dog, not particularly a Great Dane, but a dog, a large dog. He liked large dogs. And he saw an advertisement. I mean, this is 1980. There's no internet, right? He saw an advertisement in the New Orleans Times-Picayune, the local paper, and this dog was up for adoption. And so he calls up the number, and the person that answered, he said, it sounds like an office, right? He just thought, well, maybe it's the guy's work office. He doesn't, that's how he wants to do it. That's the number he put in the ad. And the person who answered said, well, you have to, everyone has to go for an interview. And he said, okay, and they gave him the address, and it's downtown in the commercial district. And he thought, oh, well, okay, I guess the guy's doing the interviews in his office, And so he shows up the appointed time, and he has an interview, and there's 3 people in the interview. 3 people, so this surprises him. So there's a veterinarian, and there's an attorney, and then there's a woman who did not identify himself, or herself rather. She didn't identify herself, but she said that she was a friend of the family. She was going to speak for the family who had the dog. And so the interview, he said it was kind of like a job interview, except, they did ask questions about what kind of lodging the dog would have, what kind of space the dog would have, if he had ever owned a dog before, if he had ever owned a dog that size before, etc. And he said then the interview just ended rather abruptly, and he said the attorney stood up and said, well, we'll let you know if we want to talk to you again. He said, thanks for coming by. Thanks for coming in. And so the guy Perry says, well, he's thinking to himself, this is kind of a formal, formal process so far. So he goes back and he said 2 weeks later, he had almost forgotten about everything, having to do that. He was still looking for a dog, but he had almost, forgotten about that. And he gets a call and they want to do a second interview. And he says, well, really? a second interview? They said, yeah. We want to do a second interview. We're interested in having you adopt the dog. And he says, okay. So he goes on back down to the office, down to the business district, and does a second interview with the same people, the veterinarian and the attorney and the woman who he said still has not identified herself with a name, just that she's speaking on behalf of the family. And he said, just as with the first interview, it ends abruptly. I said, well, thank you. We'll be in touch if we're interested. And he walks out and he's just thinking, man, this is just weird, and it's getting weirder. He said, so a couple days go by and he gets another call, the third call, and they said, well, we've decided that you will adopt the dog. Are you still interested? And he said, yeah, but what the heck is going on? I mean, why this elongated process? And I said, well, come down to the office. He set another appointment. Come down to the office, and we'll explain everything to you. So he goes down to the office again, third time, and this is what has happened. The man who had owned the dog had passed away, and in his will there were very specific instructions that about the dog would have to be adopted by a new owner, and the interview process. All of this was specified in the will. And he was a fairly wealthy individual. And so whomever adopts the dog's needs, everything, veterinarian care, food, everything, whatever the dog needs will be paid for out of the estate. And, my landlord, this guy Perry, he's thinking, well, okay, this is pretty cool, he said, and then, the veterinarian said, and when the dog passes away, he said, there will be an autopsy done to make sure that the dog died of natural causes. And the guy Perry says, well, okay, but, I'm not a dog murderer. I'm not a dog killer. He said, isn't that like a little over the top? And then the attorney jumps in and says, after Lucy, the dog, passes away, the remainder of my client's estate will pass to you, whatever that amount is. He said, of course, I'm not at liberty to tell you how much the estate is worth at this moment, but whatever it is, you will come into possession of it upon the dog's natural death. That's why an autopsy will be done. And they had the they had the dog in another room, and he, you know, he they took him out. He met the dog, and he loved the dog right away. And so when I knew him, and there's no big climax to the story because the whole time I knew him, Lucy was alive. My God, she was a great dog. I loved her. So she was alive. But at some point, you know, Great Danes don't live very long. And she was already, I think, 6 or 7 years old. Great Danes, I mean, they live to be 8, 9 sometimes. I mean, it's rare for them to get above, say, 10 years old. And at some point, she would, you know, leave. Her dog soul would leave this mortal coil, and that estate, the remainder of it, would pass to him. And so all he could do was just wonder, you know, wonder what that was going to be. And I'm sure that dog did die a natural death. He treated that dog like a child. I mean, he loved that dog. Everyone in the house loved that dog. So that's my story about well, it's his story, and I'm relaying to you his story about a guy, like in the movie, that died and made provisions for his dog after his death. And that's it. We're done here.